See. Okay. Okay, we are live. Okay. Oh, oh. We are live. Okay. Oh, oh. We are live. Okay. Oh, oh. We are live. Okay. We are live, brother. Okay. All right. Hello and welcome again to Mountaintop Living. Another day we are grateful and so thankful for. Thankful for this day, for life, health, and strength, and a good mind. We're excited about mountaintop living because mountaintop living, as we share with you in time past, it is taking control of your life, not somebody else, but you taking control of your life one day at a time and maximizing every moment by the divine frequency or the supreme energy that is within you. You know, there's a whole kingdom on the inside of you, and that whole kingdom will enable you to be all that you are designed to be. We're so excited today. We have a very distinguished guest, good friend, covenant brother with us on today, and you're going to be hearing from him in just a very little bit. Pretty sure that he is no stranger to you, no stranger to social media. I found him to be a dear friend indeed. Several years ago, we had the privilege and the opportunity of meeting him face to face in Marion, South Carolina. And then after that, we happened to bump into one another on social media, Facebook, and had time to break bread and share our conversations together once again and found a very kindred spirit and most of all, the spirit of love. You know, it's written in the scriptures that by this love shall all men know that you are my disciples. So today, we're so excited to have with us on Mountaintop Living, a very distinguished guest, Dr. Preston McKever, Kiver,
McKever.
McKever Floyd. And Preston, will you come on in and introduce yourself to the people? And we're going to come back and share in bits and pieces of your bio, and we're going to rock and roll from there.
Good morning, and thank you, my dear brother, for having me on, and I'm delighted to be here. Very much so. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, brother. You know, uh, it's there's so many that we meet on social media, but there are not many that we meet with kindred spirit. And you know, I admire that, and I do not take that lightly, because we live in a day and time where people are very professional at painting their faces and portraying one way and being another way in person. But what I have found in you is that of purity and of a dear friend. Well, I want to begin this where it all begins. You know, in life, we are fortunate and we are blessed to have parents. And, you know, uh, can I call you Professor P?
Yes, you may.
That's fine. All
Yes.
right. Uh, I want to bring a photo of a very, very handsome man here. And I want you to elaborate about this individual here.
That is my father, Samuel P. Floyd Sr.
Mm,
Grew up in a wonderful family, eight siblings, my father and my mother, and I'm sure you'll see my mother in a bit. My
hmm
father was the first African American policeman, full-time policeman in the state of South Carolina. So I grew up in that home. The interesting thing is he really did not make much of the historical contribution. I did later as I began to find out. He he really was, he very rarely talked about his work or any of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But most significantly, what I learned from him, and I learned this from watching him, not his saying it, I learned from watching him what I call equanimity. And
Okay.
that is this: he was not overly moved by praise or by blame.
Mm.
That has carried me through life, because indeed you're going to get both.
Yes.
Some are going to praise you, or sometimes you're going to be praised, other times you're going to be blamed or be the villain in someone's story. And that has been helpful, very helpful for me through my life, because I've had to face both.
Mm. You know, when you made the statement about your father, I thought about my father as well. And I called the men of that generation or that era, that time, I called them solid as a rock.
Yes.
Not only physical, but natural, spiritual, mentally, they were solid.
Yes,
If they said something, they meant what they said,
absolutely.
and they done what they said. In other words, they backed it up. Now, what year was this that he achieved uh,
He went
that?
on the police force in 1947
Hmm.
in Conway, South Carolina, 3 years before I was born.
Hmm.
And he stayed on for 28 years.
Wow, that's
And
a.
also
Mhm.
during that time, he and other early Black policemen across the state formed
Hmm.
an organization.
Hmm.
It was called the Negro Police Association, South Carolina Negro Police Association, and it has become the Palmetto Association of Law Enforcement. But he
Wow.
started that organization in the 50s.
In the 50s. You know, when I read that part about him, um, I think it was last year, maybe when I first saw it on your Facebook page, um, being an individual such as your father and having that position and functioning in that role in that day and time was a tremendous milestone.
Yes,
Um, I experienced racism growing up as a child, uh, seeing my father and my mother both deal with it and how they was able to maintain their stance and their sense of dignity in the face of racism and
absolutely.
prejudice. I can remember one morning we got up. My father was a farmer. I can remember one morning we got up and he came and he woke us up and he says, "You boys," that was his favorite words, "you boys, come here. I need y'all to help me." And what had happened was he ended up telling us that the neighbors across the field, which was Caucasians, they wanted his land. Uh, they poisoned his mews
Mm,
and poisoned several of his livestock. And so we had to assist him, in that endeavor. Uh, but I didn't hear him use any profanity. He maintained a fatherly persona before us. We didn't see any anger, hatred portrayed from him. He maintained his stance. He was solid as a rock. He wasn't moved by that. He
right.
done what he needed to do in order to uh, take care of the deceased animals and went on and purchased some more
Hmm.
mews and continued farming his land. But he shared with us even later, he says, how that the Caucasian race had taken some of his land and his family's land, and they was trying to get this particular piece of property too as well. I had some aunts, they eventually took her land by the same means. putting DDT poison down in the water wells and poisoning their livestock and putting them in a place to where they will either have to sell or leave the land. So to be able to live in that dispensation of time and maintain a sense of who they are and what they are supposed to be doing speaks volume. And
Yes.
as I look at you and have come to know about you, I can only say that the fruit comes from a result of the caliber of the roots. And
True.
that sense of strength that you have and have portrayed throughout your life, whew, it had to come from there. So
True.
when I look at this picture here, you tell me about this beautiful young lady sitting there in that beautiful hat.
Yeah. Now that's my mother. That's
Mm-hmm.
Ruby McKever-Floyd. My last name is McKever-Floyd. I
Mm-hmm.
have both parents' last bloodline. I consider having both bloodlines.
Wow.
Other
Wow.
siblings don't have that. Even as a child, I always thought that I should carry
Uh-huh.
her because she's my mother, and then she's been a great influence in my life. So in 1982, I had my name legally changed
Change.
to McKever-Floyd. Now,
Wow.
she it has is interesting all in of her own. She married my father. My father had been married before.
Mm-hmm.
His first wife died young of a
Mm-hmm.
brain tumor,
Mm-hmm.
leaving him with 5 young children.
Mm-hmm.
He was 40 years old, and my mother married him, and she was 21.
Wow.
And she
Okay.
had raised the 5 children, and then there are 4 more of us that came along. So there were 9 altogether that she raised.
Mm-hmm.
I remember she went to beauty college. I was
Okay.
3 years old because sometimes I would go with her.
Mm-hmm.
There's historic college. Um, the building still stands in Georgetown, South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
established by a Black woman, Miss
Mm-hmm.
Fanny Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And Beauty College was named Fanna Lynn Beauty College in Georgetown, South Carolina. So
Mm-hmm.
she catch the bus and go to Georgetown to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then, very young in her 20s, opened her beauty shop. And she ran this beauty shop for 30 years. In later life, she got a call to ministry. And so she started taking courses at the university where I was teaching at the time, taking courses in religion. And before she knew it, she had nearly enough courses to get a degree. So she did. She
Mm-hmm.
got a Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies
Mm-hmm.
and connected to the University of South Carolina at that time. So her degree really comes from the University of South Carolina. So, and she was a great influence with me with my educational pursuits. What is very interesting to me, she never ever said to me that I was smart.
Mm-hmm.
But what she did, and I realized it more later and even more since she's passed away,
Mm-hmm.
made sure I had every opportunity that they could afford at the time to develop. And more importantly are the kinds of things, values that she and my father that they placed in me and in my siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kinds of things that have carried me through the years.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. From a mother, a housewife, beauty, beautician,
Yes,
wow, to a minister.
yes,
Hmm. Very, 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 very encouraging. Very, very powerful. Uh,
yes.
strong, powerful woman. Likewise, like your father. You know, um, when I think about the beauty college, the beauty career, um, I thinks about my mother also as well. And my mother, she didn't attend any universities or colleges or things on that wise.
Mm.
Uh, but she was very influential in the local church.
Uh-huh.
I remember her very fluent speaking and working with the children. And then from there, she began to, as she progressed in age, she began to work with the local the local pastor, lay speaking, women's meetings and women conferences and things on that wise. And just a strong pillar and great inspiration to many in the local community. I can remember as a child also, and this is around the age of 8, 9, 10. My father and my mother, once again, was like pillars in the community. And on Friday night, the neighbors had the tendency, the fathers that was, to pick up the joy juice after
Uh-huh.
working in the fields all week. Then Friday, they wanted to uh, drink, smoke, and party. And so I'll never forget it. It would be Saturday evenings. They would be friends, neighbors, friends. They would come to the house. Mr. Fields, Miss Fields, Mr. Fields, will you come over? Mama say, will you come over and talk to daddy? Uh, Miss Fields, they'll come over with a cup or come over with a bag. Mama say, could we have a bag of sugar? Could we have a bag of flour?
Hmm.
And I remember this so vividly. And daddy would make this statement. He would always call those men boys.
Mm.
And I never understood it until many years later,
Hmm.
where in scripture, where Apostle Paul says, when I was a child, I spake as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things.
Hmm.
And so he will always call them boys. And
Uh-huh.
as I stated, I understands it so much better now because of their childish ways.
Right,
You know,
right.
the responsibility of being a man, the responsibility of being a father, a husband, a provider for their family, but yet they was acting like boys. And
Hmm.
that's the way daddy would address them, as
Mm.
boys. Well, we see so much in our society today. This what we are speaking about, how we was raised and how we
Right,
was influenced. We don't see much of that today.
right.
Professor P, what would be your word or your words of wisdom to help bring back, maybe that might not be the right thing or the right way to address it, but what would be your words of wisdom to help this generation today?
Okay. Let me say this too. First of all, a little more is going on in a positive way
Hmm.
that's often recognized.
Hmm.
Let's be clear about that. What you're saying is true. But
Hmm.
there are people there are parents who were like our parents. It's just that they're not the ones you hear about on the news.
Right.
They're not the ones you hear about on social media
Hmm.
because social media sometimes, as with the news, is sensational. So it's
Hmm.
always the negatives. Think about it. If there were no people doing that, then we wouldn't have any communities at all.
That's true.
So everybody is not
Hmm.
what we see on, and we have to be aware of that. I put up a meme yesterday, and it said, "Don't be bamboozled by perception.
Hmm. Hmm.
Be very careful." And we have to definitely look around in our communities because many times those parents and those children are quiet. You don't hear them.
Right. That's
You
true.
you already know from childhood the empty wagon makes a lot of noise.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's here. You don't hear the ones who are doing, and as a matter of fact, I constantly put on my page anytime. I see young people who are doing things worthwhile. And if they're doing it, their parents behind it.
Right.
I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to put those things on my page so people can see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Know there are people who are doing what they need to do, even sometimes young parents. Now, not enough, of course.
True.
Not, unfortunately, one thing that I've come to realize is, not I, everybody, that our village isn't what the village needs to be.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember a few years ago, I have a very dear friend, and she's a gynecologist. And I said to her, I said, Vanessa, I think we have this thing wrong
Mm-hmm.
of young people having babies
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you should have them, except the difference is this.
Yes.
In olden times, if you married young, you were in a village. So
Mm.
you had daddy, you had grandmama, aunts and uncles around to help you grow up with the children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's the difference. That's the difference. Now we have children raising children, but they have no strong support in their village.
Wow.
And we also know that it was also the case that the child in the village was everybody's child.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody could chastise them if they were wrong. And that is not happening now. A dear friend who's a minister was in the grocery store one day, and a little boy was throwing a tantrum. So he just started speaking, and citizens will say, wait a minute,
Uh-huh.
this isn't your child. And she used a few expletives.
Right.
Somebody said, no, don't say that he's a minister. She said, I don't care who he is. This is my child. And that's the problem. Or that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the issue, I should say. And some of that, I'm not sure how to bring that back. In organizations where we can, hopefully, one is the church,
Mm-hmm.
you can engender more connectedness, then we can do it to a certain extent. But to a certain extent, but I don't know that we will ever be back to where we used to, because we all lived around. As you remember, the people who taught you in school went to the church you went to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They knew the families. They worked in the community. So that's a very, very difficult one. We can either bemoan the fact and talk about what was, or we can create new ways of doing this. And I can tell you one way that it has happened with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you notice on my Facebook page, all these nieces and nephews I have.
Yes.
Well, they're not blood. They're love. These are nieces and nephews by love.
Love.
And that's one way you can do this. And they
Mm.
respect me. I can talk to them. They talk to me. And I think that's one way we can do that, is by showing love. And this is on Facebook. And some of them I have never seen in person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they feel to me like family, and I feel like family to them.
Wow.
And so another point is, and I share this when I'm speaking to young people,
Mhm.
I'm not a senior citizen who is anti-social media.
Right.
And I tell them I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But the
Yes.
point is, and I tell people this all the time, these things are instruments. It depends on how you choose to use them.
Mm-hmm.
We have electricity. We are able to speak today. You're thousands of miles away, and we can speak thanks to electricity. Well, we can also take electricity and burn a house down.
Mm-hmm.
We can take electricity and kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about how we choose to use the resource.
That's
And you can either use it for inspiration, or you can use it. A lot of senior friends will say, I'm not getting on that Facebook. People tell all their business. I said, you tell all your business on the telephone. It's up to you how much of your business you tell.
Right.
There. That's
Hmm.
that's up to you.
That's
And
right.
and so that I think this is a great way
Yes.
to help create community and even beyond your local community.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yes. As you stated, I'm thousands of miles away from you uh, here in this country. As you were speaking about the family knit, the village, love and concern and care for each child.
Hmm.
This is what I experience so much here in this country,
You
and
do.
in my wife's family, especially
Yeah.
close knit, very close knit.
Yes.
Never have to be concerned about the children in any aspect because the sisters will all rally together to see to it that the child, the parents, or whoever is in need will have what they need.
Right.
And at first, whenever 3 years ago, whenever I first entered into it, um, it kind of stunned me.
Hmm.
But then it brought me back down memory lane and
Right.
realized the importance of unity. And
Right.
as a result of that, how much stronger it makes the community. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, uh, so your father, what year did your father pass? What year did your mother pass?
Uh, my father passed in 1994.
Okay,
My mother passed in 2006.
okay, okay, 2006. Okay. All right. You know, I want to go to the next slide. And this slide here shows a part of your life, a very special event that is taking place. Tell us about this.
Okay. This is in 2009, December 2009, where I received the PhD. That's the hooding ceremony.
Hmm.
Received a PhD in philosophy from the University of South Carolina.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
interesting thing is, and I would have had no idea of this going there, but
Hmm.
I ended up being the first African American to receive a PhD in philosophy from the University of South Carolina.
Awesome.
Yes,
Wow. Awesome.
in 2009,
In
which I thought
two,
was quite interesting.
yes, yes, very, very, very interesting. Yes. And here is another slide of a painting.
Okay, yeah, yeah. A dear cousin had that, had commissioned that, and that was actually on the 10th anniversary of my having received that degree. I had
Mm-hmm.
a dear friend and cousin who was an elector for the election in 2020.
Hmm.
Uh, was not had no After the way the election turned out, there was nothing he had to do. So
Hmm.
he said, I want to be in Columbia, though. I just want to go to Columbia, to the state capitol, the day that I would have been going for work with the electors.
Hmm.
So as it turns out, I said to him, I said, that the 14th? I said, that's actually the day that I received my hoodie. And
Mm.
so that we're talking 10 years later from the time that I had gotten the degree. So we went to Columbia that day, and
Hmm.
it was actually a photograph, and then the artist did that rendering from the photograph. But if you would like, I'll tell you my educational journey that led to this moment, or do you have that question already queued?
Yes, yes, we can go ahead into it. Hmm.
Okay. Well, of course, I grew up in Conway, South Carolina, went to what was the Black high school, Whittemore, or Black schools, I should say, Whittemore Elementary and Whittemore High School.
Hmm.
I went to elementary school in 1956. So that means that that was 2 years after Brown versus the Board of Education.
Mm-hmm.
And so the schools were being desegregated across the country and
Mm-hmm.
south,
Mm-hmm.
but was not happening in Conway. I remember we would talk about it. Even as children, we were aware of it, but it wasn't happening. We had a new elementary school at that time because the word just left me. There's a word that was being used in the South that they were building these nice new schools for African Americans so as to maintain separate but equal
Mm-hmm.
education.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a new school. It was a very nice facility. And I went on from there and into Whittemore High School. And in 1966, now Brown versus Board of Education was 1954.
Okay.
1966, I call it the freedom of choice era. The schools or boards of education across the South
Mm-hmm.
began to desegregate by sending letters to African American parents and asking them what school they wanted their children to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So with my parents, I decided that I would go to Conway High School, which was the white school, as we would call it at the time. And our reason was we were told that the schools were better. So we had them under the assumption that the education was better.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier, my mother definitely wanted me to have the best opportunities that I could have. So I went to Conway High School in 1966 and graduated in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 5 African Americans, there were 4 others than me, who graduated that year. And I call us the first generation of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream. And the reason I say that is because when he was assassinated,
Mm-hmm.
1 month later, we were graduating from high school.
Yes.
So I call it that. After high school, I went on to Virginia State College. It's now Virginia State University in
Mm-hmm.
Petersburg, Virginia. It is an HBCU, historically Black college or university. And there, I was always interested in the sciences and the natural world, and I still am. And so I went majoring in biology. But in my sophomore year, sophomore year, I didn't know at first what it was, but I began receiving my calling to ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became interested in the larger questions about the universe and about life in general. In biology, we were studying smaller and smaller parts. Microbiology was becoming big at that time. So we were studying smaller and smaller parts of the universe. And I had these larger questions about the origin and about various things.
Mm-hmm.
So on my own, I started reading philosophy. I didn't even know necessarily what it was at the time, but I started reading it. And I have to this day what I call book angels. That was not my word. I read that somewhere.
Okay.
To this day, and especially then, when I'd have a question, I could walk in the library and walk down the stacks, and there would be a book.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I would know to stop at that book, or sometimes just the title of the book would answer the question I'm asking without even having to read the book. Just
Yeah.
its. And so I started reading philosophy on my own. And at the end of my sophomore year, I came home to Conway and went to Coastal Carolina University just to take my first philosophy course.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so taken with it that I went back that fall and changed my major to philosophy.
Mm.
And there's a story with that, but we'll save that for another time. But after that, I came home. Well, no, I am going to tell that story.
Yes, we have time.
I went in 68, so I was to graduate in 72. I went back that junior year and I completed a whole new major
Mm-hmm.
in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We we had some very liberal professors in the philosophy department. They were mainly young Caucasian men and one woman. And so they kind of let us get away with things that they shouldn't have. And what I mean is, and especially for me, because at the time I was a procrastinator.
Okay.
When I didn't finish a paper, they just give you an incomplete, well, you do. Well, I did that. And so I did not graduate in 72 because I had these 3 papers I needed to get done. Well, I came back home and I was working as a teacher's aide, and I was procrastinating, so I wasn't getting it done. And what was very disturbing to me is I've never been known to be a liar. And people were saying that I was lying about getting this degree that I'd flunked out. And one person even said it to my mother. She knew better. But so because they never heard of that somebody, they know that for master's or PhD, but they never heard of somebody having to write papers to finish a bachelor's. So I remember when I turned 25, I went to visit a sister who lived in Washington. And that night I was writing in my journal and reflecting over at my birthday. And I'm like, at 25, I should have long ago had my degree finished. I'm doing that this year. And I wanted to go on to seminary because I had accepted my calling. Well, I went back home. I didn't talk to anybody about it. But every afternoon after work, I worked on those papers. So by December of that year, that would have been 76. By December of 76, I had completed my degree. But the other thing I'd already done was apply to Duke University for divinity school. So I got the degree in December, and in January of 77, I was at Duke.
Wow.
And Duke was a very interesting experience. At first, I wasn't sure that I wanted to go there because it was a Southern white university and it had been long desegregated. It ended up being 3 of the best years of my life. In my second year in divinity school, I wrote this paper for a class. And when I went to pick my paper up out of the box, this is pre computers. Went my paper out of the box. The professor had put a Xerox copy of my paper in the box. And I'm like, why is he giving me a copy rather than my original? But there was a letter attached to it. And it turned out this professor was the editor of the Duke Divinity School Review, which was a major journal at the time. And he had chosen my paper to be published in the journal. And I will tell you this: I don't want to say, I don't want to be appear not humble, but that was the first time I knew I was smart. I never thought about that before.
Right.
But I was under no illusion that doesn't just happen. Okay. So after that, I later went to Northwestern University. I started a PhD there. I was in Chicago for one winter. It was too cold. So then I transferred to Emory University, and I did all but a dissertation for a PhD in religion and literature from Emory. And then later on went to the University of South Carolina and got the PhD in philosophy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
With your philosophy degrees, you do ministry, ministering to different places, churches, and special events, universities, and so forth throughout your life. Have you ever pastored?
Just first of all, let me say this. When I was receiving my calling, for a year, I told nobody about it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be sure of what I was called to do.
Right.
Unfortunately, people have a significant spiritual experience, and they immediately think they're called to preach. They may not be.
Exactly.
they may be called to something else. There are all kinds of ministries. Unfortunately, in our community, that's usually the one. So I
Yes.
wanted to be sure of what my calling was.
Hmm.
My calling, I came to realize, was to teach and to preach.
Hmm.
So, but in that you do pastor, and I was a chaplain of the university. So in that sense, I pastored, and I pastored
Exactly.
all while my local church, when my um, minister was very ill. But
Hmm.
that is not my calling.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, I do pastor. I just don't have a church. So
Right.
I pastor daily.
Yes.
There's
Exactly.
people which I'm yes,
Very grateful for.
just
Yes.
not in the traditional sense of pastoring.
Sense.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. You know, those of you listening there, we have on the bottom of the screen, we have Professor P's Cash App on the bottom of the screen. And if you feel desire to be a blessing to him, please, by all means, uh, be a blessing to him and sow a seed into his life if you desire. You know, Professor, um, as we move further and prepare to come into the last lap of our time together here today, um, uh, there's a question I wanted to ask you also as well, because I've seen also on your bio some overseas work that you done and are doing on the continent of Africa. Tell us about that experience.
Gladly. I was about to say thank you for the Cash App. And if you give donations, I can assure you it's not for my personal enhancement. It will be for my academy in Liberia. I have an academy. It's really not a school yet, but that's what I'm working toward.
Hmm.
Actually having a K through 12 school.
Yes.
This is a interesting social media story, and I love sharing this because again, people talk about the negative with social media, and
Hmm.
I'll share this. This young man, it's been about 8 years ago, just as I was about to retire from the university.
Hmm.
This man befriended me on
Hmm.
Facebook
Hmm.
from Liberia, but he was um, playing soccer or football, as they call it, in Laos, in Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
So Bernard is joining
But
us.
Bernard. Okay, baby, here he is. Thank you,
So
honey.
he was playing soccer in um, Laos, Southeast Asia,
Hmm.
and saw my Facebook page, and he sent a friend request, and I read his, and it looked okay, so I accepted the request.
Hmm.
And so after we started chatting, and he was telling me about his life. He was 17 at the time. And one day he asked me, would I be his father? I said, why are you? He said, well, I've looked at your page and you're the kind of man I would want to have as my father. And I said, well, let me think about that. Let me pray about that. So I called a friend who teaches at the university where I was and still there. She's from Sierra Leone,
Hmm.
which next door to Liberia. I said, what does that mean? She said, oh, that's a great honor.
Yes.
And, and so we talked about it. And then also I realized that there had been revolutions in and wars in Liberia up to 2003.
Hmm.
So many young men and women that I met later through Facebook really don't have parents. Some of them were killed in the war, are never found, and that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
so anyway, I told him yes, I would be. I prayed about it. I said yes, I'll be your father. So later on, I found out he did have a father. But we'll get to that story in a minute. So he said he was talking about moving back to Liberia because this contract, they give them these contracts and they're really not worth the paper they're written on.
Hmm.
He said, I will be disrespected when I go back. I said, why? He said, because I haven't become a great soccer player.
Mm.
And so I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, no, Dad, you have to tell me. And I'm like, oh, no. Is this what fathers have to do? So I said, well, let me pray about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that he should move back. And he did. And they disrespected him. They
Mm.
they shunned him. And one day he and I were talking, and he was telling me about the needs of the children in the community. And that's how we started our work there. Started
Awesome.
the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Another young man who's a well-known was a well-known soccer coach, and he's reasonably young himself. He already had a degree, and he was working in education, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So and he knew the community very well,
Mm-hmm.
people, and so he agreed to be the executive director, and his name is Abraham Wessa, and Sebuto, who the young man that I met first is my son. He became the assistant director, and they still are.
Mm-hmm.
Served 200 children in the community.
Mm.
I have, and basically out of pocket, I provide scholarships to school, to elementary and high school, for 34 children.
Mm.
And so that I pay out of pocket. I have not really felt strongly led to do big fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't do unless I feel led to. But I'll tell you an interesting story. We have had, oh, I don't know how many high school graduates. And the last year we had 11.
11.
All of them who on the scholarship have to have a B average. So all of them have that and above. I have spoken for graduation twice
Mm-hmm.
thanks to social media. I've been able to speak. They wanted me to speak. And after I spoke the first time, the faculty really wanted me to speak again. So I spoke last year.
Awesome.
And the one other interesting note with that, after several years of students graduating from high school, which is important and
Mm-hmm.
major in Liberia, because the educational system is not really good. And the best schools you have to pay. And I've been blessed that the children my scholarship children go
Mm-hmm.
to the best schools in the country, for which I'm grateful. But one night I was going to Myrtle Beach for a meeting. And I said in the car, I said, I'm really grateful, just talking to myself, talking out in the air. I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm grateful for being able to help these students graduate from high school.
Yes.
I'd like to have some children go to college. And I don't know how that'll happen, but I want to do it. But anyway, when I got back home that night, the time there's 4 hours ahead. Here
Mm-hmm.
comes a call from Cebu. I'm like, what is he doing up this time of night? He called excited. He
Mm-hmm.
said, I have something to tell you. I said, what is it? Abraham, that I mentioned, the executive director, had been hired at Noah's Ark High School. That's where all my children go now. He
Wow.
had been hired as director of athletics.
Mm-hmm.
However, he had a degree in accountancy, so he needed education credits.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to this community college, and he did so well.
Mm-hmm.
School hired him as director of ROTC, so he works at both schools. Director of ROTC, and gave us 5 free slots for college.
Awesome. Wow.
They all had to sit for the entrance exam.
Right.
5 passed, but 2 did so well that they gave us 2 more slots.
Mm.
So
Mm.
every year we have these 7 slots. Well, if that weren't enough, students, I didn't say this at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Education is the primary goal of the foundation and academy,
Mm-hmm.
but we use soccer to teach life skills and leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4 soccer teams. Lady Eagles, Eagles 1, 2, and 3.
Mhm.
They have won tournaments, just recently won a tournament. And if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see this story. I just put it up yesterday. They just won it yesterday. And
Mhm.
students were chosen to get scholarships. And so they have to sit for their entrance exams on Saturday, tomorrow. And
Wow.
most of them have always passed. So
Mhm.
that will be 5 years of college for free. So all
Mm.
I've not had to pay a dime, except
Mhm.
for them to take their entrance exam. Not
Interesting.
full scholarships.
Mm.
So I'm
As,
very grateful. The other story is this: I have never been to Africa, period. But I would like to go in 2 years because it will be 10 years for the project. And
project.
I would like to go.
Awesome. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, man. Awesome. Thanks to social media, the internet,
Yeah.
we are able to touch the world.
Yes.
Um, Years ago, when I was pastoring, to
Mhm.
be able to do what we are doing right now would have
Absolutely.
cost mucho money,
Right.
mucho dinero, and we
Right.
are able to do it free now. And
Absolutely.
so grateful for social media, so grateful for the internet. Education is the key,
Yes.
and you are a prime example of education, of an educator. You're touching people's lives around this world, and as a result of social media, because of your life, primarily number one, of a person of love, your energy that flows from you, your light that shines. It encourages people to humble themselves.
Mm.
When I first met you, I didn't tell you this, but when I first met you, all I saw was humility.
Mm.
And where's there humility, there's greatness. And as a
Mm.
result of greatness, we are able to achieve and do the things that need to be done. And Professor P, um, I'm looking forward, when I get back to the States, I'm looking forward to sitting down and breaking bread with you again and even going deeper into our conversations.
Yes.
Um, our school and schooling back in the States was always a passion and a dream of mine when
Hmm.
I was pastoring, but it never transpired. We was able to do some things and helping others in other parts of Africa. Had the privilege of going to Africa a few times. I
Good.
love the people there in Nairobi, Kenya, Kampala, Uganda. Uh,
Yes.
had the privilege and opportunity of meeting some pastors there in Sierra Leone, and
Mhm.
just beautiful people,
Right.
awesome people. And I just want to commend you for your life, service of humility, faithfulness, and diligence to your call and to the work that you
Mm.
have done these years. And as I look on your page, and as you stated, of all the people that you're touching to the degree that where they want you to be father, they want you to be uncle. That's strong, and that's to be commended. And I commend you for your lifestyle of faithfulness as an educator. I want to throw about two more slides up uh,
Okay.
and let you share and give your input on those slides too as well in dealing with education. Uh, Mother would tell us always, son, get your education. Daddy would tell me, he say, son, now I got all the education that I could get. Now you get your education, do what you need to do. And we was privileged and blessed and fortunate, uh, to have brothers and sisters that taught me in school as well as being educators. Here's one here I want to post here as well. No, that's not it. This is it here. That's a book. Education is one thing no one can take away from you.
I I can gladly speak to that. I won't
Please
say
do,
which
sir.
year and I won't say which teacher, but
Hmm.
my years in elementary school was the worst year of my life ever in education.
Hmm.
All my years have been good. For some reason, this teacher did not like me. That was
Hmm.
not an illusion. She didn't like me. Um, and I think I may have figured out why a few years ago, and I
Hmm.
may come to that. But none of my brothers and sisters had her before. My mother did not have her, but she did not like me. And I did, again, like I tell you, I didn't know anything about being smart, but I
Hmm.
always enjoyed learning. So I
Hmm.
worked my work. Even in elementary school, I was very, very conscientious about achieving and doing well with my work. Well, that year, she did not let me do any of the things that I liked doing. She stood in my way. And which was kind of interesting. Mother could have had me move from her class, but she did not.
Hmm.
She did not do it. And she would always say, get it in your head. No one can take that away. Because she'd gone through trouble as a young woman. She was valedictorian of her class, and they tried to take it away from her for a prettier girl. And she had earned, and so she knew. And
Uh-huh.
what that was like, and her mother was not alive at the time because her mother died young. Her father died shortly before her graduation from high school.
Hmm.
So she would tell me, get it in your head. Nobody can take it away. So that is a good slide to put up because that's been another um, guiding principle for me to to get it in. And I to this day I study every day. I
Every
can
day.
study something every day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, my wife, this is our second year of marriage, and
Yes.
she tell me, she said, "You study, you read all the time." I
Hmm.
say, "Yes, I do." I says, "Reading take me places I could never go physically."
Right. Right.
And I love reading. My sister, who was a librarian when I was in elementary school,
Mm.
uh, she was the first person that I knew to travel to Israel. And this was back in 1968, 67, 68. And she traveled to Israel. But Mama shared with me that when I was a baby, I was born premature. And as a result of that, sickly coming up as a child,
Sure.
and my sister would rock me. She would call me her baby. She would rock me to sleep a lot. And I can remember her reading to me
Yes.
while
Yes.
she was rocking. She was reading to me as a child. And she's still to this very day right now reading, 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 reading. Reading,
Wonderful.
reading, 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 reading. She's in a rest home, nursing home, but she's still a reader. And reading is the key.
Absolutely.
Reading, reading makes a man ready.
Yes.
Writing makes a man exact. So the
Mhm.
two go hand in hand. We need reading and we need writing.
Yes.
And here's the last slide I want to share. Let's see if this is it. Oh, this the one. Let's see. Is that the one? That one.
Okay.
Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Malcolm X.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That really says it all. That says it all because if opportunities come and you're not
Hmm.
prepared,
Hmm.
it's not like having them.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
But and again, when you're preparing, when you're studying, you really should study and read for your sake, for
Hmm.
your development.
Hmm.
Now, what happens is many times opportunities will come and you will be ready.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
should read just to be ready for an opportunity. You should read to enrich your life. and to make you a better person and to expose you to things, as you were saying, and for most of all, to help you have questions.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, this is what education is about. The word education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to lead out or
Mm-hmm.
to draw out. Education is not a filling station, and that's the model that people take, that you drive up and you put knowledge in. No, 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 no. Education is drawing out what
Out.
is already there, and it is helping you to connect with what is already there. And the way that happens is by asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Asking questions. It all starts with the question. Particularly in philosophy, that is the key. That you always question. And one of the things that people, one of the issues, major issue that we see in the world with the kind of so-called leadership, the so forth, is that they don't want any answer but the one they choose or have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't want people asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
It is I am under no illusion. The conscious attack on education in the universe, United States of America, is about control. If
Absolutely.
if you read the fall of countries in Europe and other places in the world, when there were revolutions, the first thing they did was went into the university and killed the intellectuals,
Mm-hmm.
because these are the people who ask questions. And if you can control what's going in or what people are learning, then you can control their minds.
Mm, exactly.
Yeah. But I don't think this is going to work out well, despite what it looks like at this point,
Mm-hmm.
because what it's going to
Uh-oh. Look like we lost Professor P. It's been a great hour that we have shared. I think he's coming. Yeah, you're back. Great.
okay, yes. Could you hear me while I was gone?
No, I couldn't hear you.
What I was saying is this is not going to work out well with this attack on, because you're talking about people who are educated themselves, who
Mm-hmm.
are doing these attacks. So they know what they're doing.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to work out well. What's going to happen is it's going to encourage people then to learn, to
Mm-hmm.
read.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was saying, on my page, they can learn something every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
I'm going to continue to educate. The joy, people say, well, do you miss teaching? I say, I still teach. The
Exactly.
beauty of teaching now is I don't have to grade papers. I
Yes.
don't have conference, office hours.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
because many times I'm putting up things 1 o'clock in the morning, as you know.
Yes.
And and people are reading it. So that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty. And education still is the key. One other thing I want to say, I like they have many schools have gifted and talented programs, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But my thought is this: all students, all human beings are gifted and talented. The job of my job as an educator and others is to help all people, all of our students discover their
Mm.
and talents and help draw them out.
Yes.
Educare, to draw out.
Awesome. Awesome. Professor, we certainly enjoyed this time today. And I pray and trust that it will not be our last, that we can go deeper and deeper. I'm pretty sure that this has been words of encouragement, words of wisdom to share with so many. And to those who come on and view it at a later time, they will find it so themselves. I like to close by saying this: preparation is never lost time. What may
Amen.
seem like a season of devastation is
Yes.
simply a season of preparation. And in
Yeah.
our darkest moments and darkest hours, take the time to just prepare yourselves. Take that time to read, to study, to search, research, and you will find that what you know is not all there is to know. Once again, this is Michael Fields with Mountaintop Living. I want to encourage you once again, visit Professor P Facebook page, Preston McKever-Floyd, McKever-Floyd. Visit his page. Be a blessing to him and the school that is work that he is doing there in the continent of Africa. And also, we want to encourage you to join us again. We will be back for Mountaintop Living. Professor P, we love you, my brother, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much for being our very distinguished guest on today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, brother, we love you. And as we say so many times, peace be with you, peace go unto you, and may you be filled the more with the love of the Almighty.
Thank you.
All right, Facebook family and friends, till the next time, this is Michael Fields with Mountaintop Living.